Hello, everybody. My name is Josh Whalen. I'm an advisor here at Alterra Advisors, joined today by Zach Hamilton. Zach, how's it going?
Pretty good. Glad to be here.
Good, good. So we are here to talk about strategic giving. At Alterra, we talk about using wealth as a tool to enjoy your life, provide for your loved ones, and impact causes you care about. And so, from a kind of a planning philosophy standpoint, what we know is until you have the answers to the questions, am I going to have enough to enjoy my life? Am I going to have enough to and the game plan to take care of my family and my loved ones? It's hard to get mentally to the point where I can give freely and readily to charity, to causes that I care about. But when you do get there, which we see people get there a lot, we get to have a lot of fun because using wealth to impact causes that you care about is one of the most fun things you can do in planning. And I asked Zach to join us today because this is also, Zach, one of your favorite topics out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a topic that fires me up, so I'm glad you called me in for it.
Yeah. So we're going to go through a handful of things today, but wanted to start with a story, Zach, that you were sharing with me just a little bit ago that kind of prompted us to have this discussion.
Yeah, so this is actually a combination of two different situations we ran into over the last year, and basically the same story for both of them, which was feeling like we think we're doing a pretty good job. Like financially, they had been successful by a lot of different standards, but feeling kind of stuck. They were wanting to give to the causes they cared about, wanted to make sure they were on track for their financial independence goal, wanted to help the people that they cared about that weren't, that they've got family, extended family they want to support and help, but they kind of felt like we don't even know where to start or how much of this we can really afford to give. If we knew how much we could give, we'd want to, but we don't know how much we can give, and then we don't know the way to do that. And so
Hmm.
they kind of felt stuck. They hadn't done anything. So in both of these situations, they were for the previous handful of years, they felt like I know I need to do something, but I just don't know what that thing is, and it had dampened their giving. So
Yeah.
yeah, they felt stuck, and we're able to have conversations that help.
Hopefully help get you unstuck.
Yeah.
Um, Really common circumstance that we hear, Zach. I know you hear that all the time, as do I. But people feeling like I want to do something, but I don't feel like I have the knowledge or the game plan to be able to do it. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk through some ways to be a little bit more strategic with what you give, and we're going to do that through four stories of generous families, people that we worked with, or stories that we've worked with, people that wanted to make a big difference, but they had some significant roadblocks to that impact. We'll talk about solutions that their situations could have used in order to increase their impact, and we'll talk about what that means. And then if you're watching this as somebody who wants to be more strategic, even more intentional with your giving, we'll talk about some very practical ways that you can get started. Before we jump in to the first story, Zach, why don't you take a minute and just talk about our perspective on why give? Why is this a topic we spend so much time thinking about?
Yeah, so we have a lot of clients that have charitable intent. They want to give, and it is not just I want to pay less in taxes, right? That is a tax benefits are definitely a huge factor to how we do this, but that's not the why. It doesn't. That's not what fires our clients up or the donors up is the tax savings. It's they want to. I mean, it's a legacy thing. It's a values thing. We got a lot of clients who would say that they're stewards of the wealth that they have been blessed with, and they want to be good stewards of that. So it's more about what am I doing, passing values going forward, than it is a tax savings or something like that. So there has to be a why for the giving that's outside of I want to pay less in taxes. But we've got a lot of those that, yeah, they get to reflect what they care about with their dollars. I've said, if you look at someone's balance sheet, look at their checkbook and their calendar, you can find out what matters to them. And so I think there's some power in using the checkbook. In this case, not literally, hopefully, as we'll talk about in a minute, but using the checkbook to show what I really care about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fun.
And I think what for this not being fundamentally about I give because I want to save in taxes.
Sure.
The conversation does shift there pretty quickly because people who view themselves as stewards want to make sure that they're not only intentional, but effective and efficient with what they give.
Hmm.
So if I could have given more of the same dollar to charity and lose less to taxes, I want to know about that.
Hmm.
And some of the most difficult conversations that we've had have been folks who could have given more of the same dollar but lost too much to taxes because of maybe just inefficient strategy. Maybe they just didn't know what to do. There's not a gathering of people around them to help advise on this stuff. And so if you're watching this and that's you, that is extremely common, and it's why we love talking about this. So we're going to dive into the first of our four stories. This story is about the Johnsons, and we call this the checkbook limitation. So you're going to see these stories introduced based on the problems these folks encountered. This was a successful professional family. They wanted to give more to the causes that they cared about, but they felt constrained by cash flow. And the problem that we identified was they were really limiting their giving to cash flow only. Many families think their giving is writing checks only, meaning cash flow comes in, cash flow goes out of what's left over that I didn't need that month for unexpected expenses or what have you. I can give that. If I wanted to give more, I kind of just wish my cash flow was better. Um, so that made their cash flow feel really stressed, monthly expenses, and then those annoying kind of uh, unexpected expenses or even savings goals that they have make bigger donations feel really difficult. So, Zach, we're going to go to the solution that oftentimes helps in this type of situation. So, why don't you walk through what is balance sheet giving and why is that the solution to this problem?
Yeah. So what they were doing, the Johnsons were doing is cash flow giving, meaning they're taking the piece that is cash sitting in their case in a checking and savings account accessible today from the bank, right? And the solution we've talked about, and this is true for the rest of the cases we're going to talk about, is balance sheet giving is looking at not just the cash, but what are the other assets on the balance sheet that could potentially be used for giving for other things, but in this case, charitable giving. So
Mhm.
they have life insurance, they have real estate, they have retirement accounts, they have ownership in a business, they have appreciated stock. All of those are on the balance sheet, but in their case, had not even been considered as part of their potential plan for charitable giving.
Hmm.
So they're looking at a very small, kind of blinders on. I'm looking at what's in my checking account to see if I can give, instead of looking at what's on my balance sheet to see if I can give, if that's an important goal.
Right.
So kind of taking off the blinders and looking at the whole puzzle.
And in a situation like the Johnsons, that successful professional family, in our area, in the kind of greater Western Washington, Pacific Northwest area, it's a lot of folks that work at tech companies. And so this isn't the only situation that this comes up in, but a lot of these folks are receiving lots of stock as compensation that they think of as kind of off to the side. It shows up on a statement once in a while. I interact with my cash flow all the time, but I don't often think, oh yeah, I could donate a share of stock as well as a dollar of, of my savings account. And in many ways, as we'll talk about in the next example, donating stock might actually mean you're donating more of the same dollar than you would be if you just gave the cash out of your bank account. But simply looking instead of from a cash flow perspective, looking at it as a balance sheet, I can give items off my balance sheet to charity. That oftentimes that alone massively unlocks potential for folks. So great. Like we said at the bottom here, for many, balance sheet giving, it unlocks far more generosity than giving out of your cash flow ever could. Okay, so we kind of teased this next story here, the $50,000 tax mistake. So uh, this was Sarah and Mike. They were some of these tech workers that we talked about. And what they were doing on a regular basis was they had all this stock that had piled up from years working at these various companies. They would sell that stock, uh, triggering a massive tax bill that could have been avoided, and they just didn't know it. So what's the problem here? Okay, these folks have stock that they've owned for quite some time. Those companies oftentimes are ones that see pretty significant gains. It makes sense if I wanted to give and I don't have the cash flow, well, I got to sell some stock to do that, right? Well, that's what part of the problem was in this case. They were selling their assets first, so they sell their appreciated investments. When I sell it, I have to pay capital gains tax. In their case, it was a 23.8% federal capital gain tax rate. That doesn't even include if you're here in our home state of Washington, you could be exposed to close to a 10% additional capital gain tax. They were then giving the cash and then taking the deductions and making the impact on the charity that they could have. So I'm selling my stock, I'm paying the capital gain tax, I'm giving the remaining proceeds. And what I didn't realize is I could have been more efficient with this. So, Zach, talk to me about what could Sarah and Mike have done differently to give more of the same dollars to the cause they care about?
Yeah, so this is one where they about 80% of the what they did was spot on and just a
Yes.
little bit of a tweak was off. So in their case, it's Amazon stock, right? It's appreciated, gone way up in value. They're feeling not guilty, but as stewards of the what they're like, this has grown, but this is the only money we kind of have that's available to use for giving. So we're gonna have to sell some of those shares to give, but we have way more stock than we are gonna need. So let's give out of that.
Yeah.
So instead of selling the shares first, they can give the shares directly. So
Mhm.
give the shares directly to the charity, give if they want to. Some charitable organizations are set up to do that. Others wouldn't know what to do if you handed them a stock certificate. So and you might not even know what it's are. Yeah, stock certificates aren't even a thing that most people hold on to. But in their case, they can do use a donor advised fund. So a DAF, a donor advised fund, is I call it a charitable checkbook. So it allows them to take the shares of stock and instead of selling those shares, they put the shares into their donor advised fund that they are the advisors for. So as soon as the shares go in, that's a charitable deduction based on the fair market value of those shares. In their case, that means that they bought the shares basis was much lower than what they were selling them for, which means they're not paying the capital gains. They're getting a larger deduction, and all of the dollars, not just the after tax dollars, all of the dollars are then available to be used for charitable giving directly to the charity. And in their case, the donor advised fund, you can list the organization and then the organization gets a check. And I don't know, all organizations know what to do when they get a check or an ACH, automatic deposit into their accounts. So that's a small shift to make the same dollars go much further in the direction that they wanted to go. So that's $50,000 that is not going to the tax bill, that is now going toward the tax deduction, and all of that difference can go toward the charitable cause that they ultimately wanted the money to go to originally anyway.
Yeah. And the big distinction here is that when you sell your stock, you pay capital gain tax. When a charity sells your stock, they do not pay the capital gain tax. That's the big thing you're leveraging here. You can hand somebody the thing, and if you sell it, there's no tax. If I sell it, there's a bunch of tax. So why not just hand it to you first?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hang on the donor advised fund concept for just a minute. Here's a situation we see pretty regularly. Somebody has a big year of income, or they sell a business, or they get a big bonus, or fill in the blank, whatever it is. They could really use more tax deductions that year, but they want to maintain their annual giving. Zach, you mentioned some of this, but in the donor advised fund, you can take an immediate deduction for what you donate today, but you don't have to give it all right away. So you can donate an amount of stock that would have generated $1 million in gain. Using a donor advised fund, you get to avoid all of the capital gain tax, sell that, and give it over time to the charity. You could give it over as much time as you possibly want. So you get the deduction today, you get flexible timing for when you give the money, and then you get to avoid all of the capital gain tax that would have otherwise been lost. Just this idea right here is worth its weight in gold when implemented properly. Um,
Add to that, the money in there in the donor advised fund can be invested in growing while it waits to then
right? Yes.
go. So it can act like like a family foundation, but
Yeah.
with way less administrative burden uh, and and no tax, which is fun.
Well, let's go to the next story here. We call this one the big sale dilemma. So this is maybe just a slightly more amplified version of the previous story, but in a very unique context. So Tom and Janet had built this family business from the ground up. They had a big sale coming. They really wanted to give a significant portion of the sale proceeds, but they didn't have the timing totally figured out. They weren't sure what they needed for themselves. Um, and so here's what their dilemma was. They thought, I'm going to sell the business And because, so they know that's coming up. We're going to sell this business. Uh, I know that's going to happen, but I don't know how much of the proceeds we need, and I don't even know really how to figure that out. And then I thought, well, I thought that if I was to commit a bunch of money to charity, I got to donate a bunch of money right now. Well, I don't know who I want to donate all of this to yet. So I'll just go through the sale, then I'll figure out how much of the proceeds I need, and then I'll give to charity. What the challenge that they encountered there is they inaccurately thought that when you donate, that the gift has to happen at the same time. We just talked about this with the donor advised fund. They can put money into a donor advised fund, then figure out that secures the tax deduction and so on, then figure out who do I want this to go to. They can figure that out separately. But because they didn't, they paid a bunch of unnecessary taxes when they sold their business. So, Zach, talk through a little bit of this kind of amplified version of the uh, the kind of the last problem, but let's also drill into how they could have addressed this issue of, well, I don't know how much of what we're going to sell for, that we're going to get this big lump sum. I don't know how much of that I need. What if I need access to the income?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think what I describe it as we're jumping hurdles
Hmm.
and making sure that we understand which hurdle we're doing at what time. So the first, what you just described, there is someone's kind of mashing the hurdles together and tripping. When you say, I need to figure out how much I'm going to give, figure out what cause I'm going to give it to and when, and I'm doing that all at once, instead of saying, well, if I can determine how much I ultimately want to give, but I don't have to yet decide how much to each specific cause and exactly when, that's I can separate those hurdles out and not be tripped by them. So that's where the donor advised fund can be great. They can say, I know I want to give X portion of the sale. And again, they have to usually do some planning before this to know what X portion is reasonable. But I know X portion needs to be going toward charitable cause, in their case, $5 million. I
Hmm.
know I want that, but I don't have to know exactly what causes today, and I don't have to distribute the dollars out to them today. I just have to commit to a $5 million charitable checkbook to go to charitable causes that I care about over my lifetime or my kids' lifetime and beyond,
Hmm.
which is a much easier hurdle to jump at first. But that
So we've
said,
talked
this,
about the impact of giving to the donor advised fund.
yep.
What about if I'm not sure whether I'm going to need access to this or not?
Yep, yep. So that's the hurdle. If we can't get over that first hurdle of I'm confident I will never need this money, I'm going to give 5 million outright. They can set it up as an income stream during lifetime. So in this case, we're using a charitable remainder trust, which allows them to put the piece of the business into the trust, and before the sale of the business, then take the proceeds from that. And because they're already in a charitable trust, they don't pay any tax on the sale that stays in the trust. And then just the income when it comes out pays tax for them. So in their case, $5 million would create $250,000 of income for life and give a $1.75 million tax deduction today. So we can, in this situation, we're paying $1.6 million less in capital gains taxes, getting a pretty significant tax deduction today, which, by the way, in the year they sold their business is the right time to get a big tax deduction. And then we get to say we have this income stream if we need it for the rest of our lifetime. If we don't end up needing it, by the way, which in there, this is not all that uncommon, you can say, if I needed it, it comes in. If I don't end up needing it, I can give that income stream to charity along the way, but it comes through me. I have access to it if I did need it, which is more flexibility,
Yeah.
but with a big tax benefit by planning that in advance.
So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges that we see. I'm selling this business in their case for $30 million. I love the idea of giving 5 million to charity. Number one, I don't know if I can, even though still the remaining 25 million sounds like a lot. Taxes chip away at it, and then fees to sell the business chip away at it, and then almost regardless of the dollar amount, when people don't know how much they need, if they're responsible individuals, they go, well, I can't make any decisions without knowing how much I'm going to need. That doesn't help anybody. So, solving that question first, it's why we start there almost every single time. How much are you going to need to take care of yourself so that it unlocks everything else? And then even that point that you made, Zach, is crucial. The idea of funding something like a charitable remainder trust, it just gives you the option to keep the income. You don't have to keep the income. If you don't need it that year, you could give more that year. But if you had a year where you had major unexpected expenses, health expenses, family investment that was needed, whatever the case is, you retain the ability to use that income in the years where you do need it. Um, and then whatever's left in that trust at the end would leave would go to them at that time. So let's kind of wrap here on the stories with a final story about Robert and Linda. These were folks who were more advanced in their years. They were thinking about their kids, grandkids, great grandkids were even starting to come onto the scene. And they really want to make a big impact on charitable organizations, but they felt like a dollar I give to charity is a dollar I'm taking from my family. Um, and they love both of these groups, right? They love their family, they love these causes and see the great impact that they're making. And so this is a really common situation that we see in this circumstance. Number one, they're worried about their family having enough. Number two, they're worried about wanting to make the biggest impact they can on the causes they care about, and they feel paralyzed by the trade-off. It feels like it's one or the other. My family's going to be okay, or this charity is going to be benefited. So, Zach, why don't you talk us through some of the things that we talked through with them briefly, kind of what we're seeing here on the screen, and then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into the impact that well-organized solutions can make from a numbers perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think even the framing of the discussion as family versus charity is misleading. And as you said, it feels like a dollar from here has to come from here, from the other side of that ledger. And so in their case, what we can do is take it one step, going back to the hurdles, one hurdle at a time. First is how much do we need during our lifetime? We need to identify that value, make sure that's set aside and accessible if we do end up needing it. Accounting for market volatility, accounting for tax, accounting for inflation, all that needs to be factored in. Now, once we've done that, now we can look at, well, in their case, can we fund with some of the surplus, fund a charitable remainder trust that allows us to get a pretty significant tax deduction today
Hmm.
and create the income that we don't intend to need but could have access to if we did want it. So kind of as a secondary backup plan. And in their case, we said, well, we don't actually plan on needing that. We don't want those dollars. We're going to take a piece of that income and use that to fund a wealth replacement trust for the benefit of kids and grandkids. So the downside with the charitable remainder trust, all it's great tax benefits, great income, all the cool things with it, but whatever's left in that trust when they pass goes to the charity, which means feels like that means it goes away from the kids.
Hmm.
So in their case, we take some of that tax savings, that tax deduction, and that income stream and use that to create the wealth replacement trust that's outside of the estate, that in this case owns insurance outside the estate, which means it's income tax free and estate tax free if it's structured correctly, which now means we can replace the dollars that went to charity at their passing with dollars that go to the kids, income and estate tax free for their benefit. So it's a pretty cool combination strategy. You'll see the numbers here in a second that make it feel even cooler.
So they start with their whole pie, and they go, what slice of this do I need to take care of myself? What slice of this do I want to give to charity? And then how can I use some of that strategy to replace that slice with for the family? So it's actually what we're going to see is, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually expanding the size of the pie itself.
Yep. Yep. It is not you get a slice, so I lose a slice. It
Yes.
is you get a slice and there is more pie overall. So
Well, so
uh
let's talk through the what we have here is the power of smart giving. So I'll talk through the default plan before, and then Zach, why don't you walk us through the after effects of this strategic plan?
yep.
So one of the most frequent conversations we have with people that are thinking about their legacy planning is that everybody has a default plan. And it's the plan that would automatically take place if you just passed away and you had no other planning by yourself. The government has a whole series of checklists and things that would happen by default. So when you don't plan, all you're doing is you're accepting the default plan. Well, for Tom and Janet, their default plan was they were projected to have about $10 million remaining at death. That would all be in their estate and passed to their family. So even though they have charitable intent, they didn't have a game plan to give to charity. So by default, nothing passes to charity. 8.7 million would go to their family, still not bad, and about 1.3 million dollars would be lost to taxes through the state of Washington's estate tax. So that's what we would have been seeing here. So by rejecting the default plan and making a plan by design is kind of how we often refer to it. Zach, talk us through what's the after effect of a more strategic plan they could have chosen.
Yeah. So we start, you can notice here, we're starting with the same assets.
Hmm.
And funny, you mentioned they were going to leave it all to their family, but both in this case, both of them articulated very clearly that they did want a piece of it to go to charity. They just hadn't written it down anywhere. So what they said was, we agree, definitely $2 million we want to go to charity. So we said, well, we can put $2 million into the Charitable Remainder Trust now and take a piece of that income from the trust, the charitable trust, to fund the wealth replacement trust. So we're not actually even using all of it necessarily, because we're getting a tax benefit on top of that. But ultimately, what that leads to is there's still a significant portion of that that goes to the family. So 8.5 million, when you include the money from the wealth replacement trust, is going to family. Compare that to the 8.7 the family was getting before. We are, in this case, $200,000 less that is going to family. We acknowledge that, totally understood that. That makes sense. In exchange for that $200,000 give up, there's $2 million that's going to charity. So
Hmm.
I articulated that that's a 9-to-1 charitable match from the IRS. That's a pretty cool. I don't know if you've ever been to the fundraisers where they say we got a match, and how cool that's fun. They don't ever do 9-to-1s, and it's never from the government. So
That's
I thought that
right.
was pretty cool. And then you see here there is zero state estate tax that is due because of the way that that plan is structured. So there's the pie is $1.5 million bigger in this, or that's 15% larger pie that gets to be distributed much more toward the things that they said they wanted it to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. So gave 2 million more to charity, still left a generous inheritance to their family, and lost zero to capital gain and estate taxes through planning like this. So hopefully this gives a couple of ideas if you find yourself in these circumstances with these challenges or concerns of strategies that should be considered. But I think more importantly is that there's a process and a plan and an approach that can help you think systematically through this, make intentional decisions, and then integrate the right strategies. We don't expect after watching this, you're going to be able to say which mix of strategies are the right ones for your particular situation. You definitely need to be consulting the advising team that you work with, the attorneys you work with. Hopefully, those people are all getting around the same table and helping to brainstorm ways to synergize and maximize the results for you. But if you're looking at ways just practically to get started, here's three simple things to consider doing. First off is defining your why. At the end of the day, what's important to me? What's the big impact that I want to make, both myself, my family? That's the value I'm going to leave behind. We talk about this all the time. The value I'm going to leave behind, meaning the money, and the values I'm going to leave behind, the ideas and the values that are important, the impacts that we want to make and be known for. The second then is deciding what and how, which are the right assets to give and which of the right are the right assets to spend on ourselves and give to our family. Each type of asset is very different. And so you want to choose very strategically which ones you give based on uh, uh, a handful of different characteristics, taxes, accessibility, and otherwise. And then start with one meaningful step. It could be one donation. It could be one meeting with a development director. It could be one discussion with my spouse or my family about the impact that we want to make. But do something that moves you forward toward this objective of being a more intentional giver. Here are a few ways that we are here to support you. Number one is whether or not you work with us, you can go to our website, alteraadvisors.com, and you'll find articles, a whole bank of articles, and you can filter it for charitable impact or philanthropic impact or tax impact. But these are three that we would recommend you specifically search for. Which assets do I spend and which do I pass on? Is my legacy by default or design? And then how to start this conversation with your family. And we have 4 steps to help do that. The other thing that we are always excited to do is what we call charity chats. Zach, give me the quick rundown on what's a charity chat.
Yeah, this started when an organization approached me asking me to just talk to some of their donors. And I said, I would be anyone who cares about this cause, which I also happen to be a donor too. I said, anybody who cares about the cause, I would be more than happy to talk to them, whether they are a client, not a client, never even going to consider it. I'm happy to have a charitable chat.
Yeah.
So sit down for half an hour. It's usually more like an hour, but sit down with someone and just walk through, are they optimizing how they do their giving? Is there things that could be done to improve that? And then give them some pointers on next steps to go from there.
Yeah. And clarity you can use with just on your own, with the advising team you work with. If you work with us, their ideas you're definitely going to hear from us as well. So kind of bringing everything to a close here. We often talk about writing your story. Your generosity can tell a powerful story. And everybody leaves a legacy behind. And the more thought that we find you put into it in advance, not only the more fulfillment and joy you can have with the assets you have while you're alive, but it impacts the memories and the ripples that go out long after you're no longer using those assets. Let's just say that. So thank you for being here. Hopefully this has been helpful, give you some ideas on how to be more intentional with your giving. If there's anything more we can do to help, you're welcome to reach out to us via our website at alteraadvisors.com, and we hope this has been helpful.